Marcus Williams pulled the door open with a baseball bat cocked over his shoulder because nobody knocked on a black man's door at 11:47 at night in Atlanta with good news. The bat stopped 6 inches from Clare Bennett's face. She didn't flinch. That was the first thing that was wrong. "Marcus," she said, "my air conditioner broke. Can I stay tonight?" He lowered the bat. He let her in. He shouldn't have. 2 days later, he would climb up to that woman's air conditioner with his own tools and find out it had never broken at all. Somebody had pulled it apart on purpose. But that was 2 days away, and on this night, all Marcus knew was that a neighbor he had barely spoken to was standing on his porch in the worst heat the city had seen in years, asking to come inside. The bat came down slow. Marcus stood in his doorway in a sweat-soaked undershirt and work pants he hadn't taken off in 19 hours, and he stared at his neighbor like she was a math problem he was too tired to solve. "Claire, hi, it's almost midnight. I know. You knocked like the house was on fire." "I knocked 3 times. You knocked like the house was on fire," he said again, and set the bat against the wall just inside the door handle, up the way a man sets down something he might need again in a minute. Claire looked at the bat, then at him. "Were you going to hit me with that?" "I was going to hit whoever was pounding on my door at 11:47 at night. That's a very specific time." "I looked at the clock," Marcus said. "You look at the clock first, then you look for the bat, then you decide if you're the kind of man who opens the door." "And what kind of man are you?" "The tired kind." She laughed, and it came out wrong. Too high, too fast. A laugh that had been sitting in her chest too long and came out cracked. And Marcus, who had learned 3 years ago how to hear a person's whole life in one bad sound, heard it. He looked at her properly for the first time. Clare Bennett lived in the corner unit across the street. 6 months, maybe 7. Interior designer drove something German, waved with 2 fingers off the steering wheel like a woman with a meeting to get to. In all that time, Marcus had said maybe 9 words to her, and most of them had been, "You left your lights on." Right now her hair was stuck to her neck. She had a purse on one shoulder and a duffel bag on the other, and one white sneaker untied, and she was standing on his porch at almost midnight, like a woman who had been driving in circles for 2 hours, working up the nerve to do exactly this. "My air conditioner broke," she said again. "You heard me? It's 104 in my living room. I have a thermometer. I checked. 104 Marcus, at midnight." "At midnight," he said, and he didn't move. That was the thing he would think about later, how long he stood there not moving. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't even suspicion, not yet. It was arithmetic. He was a 34-year-old black man in a neighborhood that had opinions about who belonged on which porch. He had an 8-year-old daughter asleep down the hall, and there was a 31-year-old white woman on his step asking to come inside for the night. Across the street, behind a slat of blinds that had been bent for 2 years, Mrs. Doyle's porch light was on. Mrs. Doyle's porch light was always on. Marcus Clare said, "Say something." "I'm thinking." "About what?" "About what this looks like." "It looks like a woman with a broken air conditioner to you," Marcus said. And that landed. He watched it land, watched her eyes drift somewhere over his shoulder into the dark of the house, then come back different. "Oh," she said quietly. "Yeah, I didn't." She started again. "I didn't think about that." No, Marcus agreed, and there was no meanness in it at all, which somehow made it worse. "You didn't." The heat that week had a name in the news. They kept calling it a dome, like something had been lowered over the city and sealed at the edges. 14 straight days over 100 degrees, grid strain, rolling brownouts on the east side, 3 deaths in DeKalb County, all of them people over 70, all of them found in apartments where the power had cut and nobody had checked. Marcus knew all of it because Marcus fixed air conditioners for a living. For 14 days, he had been climbing into attics that read 130 degrees and coming down with his shirt weighing 4 pounds more than when he went up. 14 days of old women saying, "Baby, do you want some water?" while he told them their compressor was gone and it was going to be $1,600, and watched them do the math on their faces. 14 days of not charging half of them. And then at night, 6 in the evening to 1 in the morning, he drove food deliveries because the $1,600 he didn't charge Mrs. Ruthie on Delano was $1,600 that didn't come home. He'd gotten home at 11:20 that night. He'd been inside his own house for 27 minutes. Marcus Clare said, "I'm sorry, I'll go." She turned. And here was the part he could never explain afterward, not to his sister, not to his pastor, not to Lily when she was old enough to ask. He said, "Where?" She stopped. "Where are you going to go, Claire?" "A hotel at midnight in a heat emergency with every hotel from here to Marietta booked solid with people whose power's already gone. Then I'll sleep in the car, with the engine running for the air conditioning in a driveway in a city under a curfew advisory." Marcus rubbed his eyes with his thumb and forefinger. You know how many people died in cars this week? That's not 0. 4 people. You want to be the 5th? Or do you want to come inside? Claire stood on the step with the duffel bag digging into her shoulder, and she said in a voice he had absolutely not expected from a woman who drove a German car and waved with 2 fingers, I don't want to be a problem. And Marcus Williams, who had spent 3 years being a father, a widower, a technician, a driver, a survivor, and nothing else in that order, heard something in that sentence that he recognized so completely it felt like being struck. I don't want to be a problem. Nikki used to say that at the end when she couldn't get up the stairs anymore. Come inside, he said. Take your shoes off. My daughter's asleep. Is she your girlfriend, Dad? Lily Williams, age 8, stood in the hallway in a nightgown with a cartoon otter on it, holding the doorframe with both hands like a woman about to give a deposition. Marcus dropped the couch cushion he was holding. Lily, is she? Go to bed. You said no strangers in the house. She's not a stranger. She's Miss Clare from across the street. I don't know her. You've seen her 100 times. Seeing isn't knowing, said Lily Williams, age 8. Behind him, Claire made a sound like she'd swallowed her own laugh. Marcus turned around slowly. Something funny. Your daughter is brutally honest. Her mother was a paralegal for a law firm for 9 years, Marcus said. She got it in the blood. Lily hadn't moved. She was studying Claire with the flat, unblinking assessment of a child who has already survived one enormous loss and has therefore decided to personally audit everyone who comes through the door for the rest of her life. Why is your air broken? She asked. I don't know, Claire said. Daddy fixes air. I know. Then why didn't you ask him to fix it instead of sleeping here? The room went very quiet. Marcus felt something move in the back of his head, not suspicion, a little cousin of it, a tick. He looked at Claire. Claire looked at the carpet. Because it's midnight, Claire said, and I didn't want to wake him up before work. You woke him up anyway, Lily pointed out. Lily, bed, now. Fine. She turned, then turned back. Miss Claire. Yes. There's a fan in the closet. Dad puts it on me when the power goes off. You can have it. And she went to bed. Claire stood in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed over her chest and did not say anything for a long moment. Then she said, Marcus, your kid is going to run this country someday. God help it, Marcus said. He gave her the couch. He gave her a blanket she didn't need and a pillow that still smelled faintly of Nikki's shampoo because he had never figured out how to throw out a pillowcase. He set the box fan on the floor, angled at the cushions, and he stood in the doorway to the hall with his hand on the light switch. Marcus. Yeah. Thank you. Don't thank me. Don't make it a big thing. He killed the light. It's a couch. It's not a couch, Claire said in the dark. He stopped. It's 104 degrees in my apartment, she said. And I have 400 people in my phone. And I drove around for 2 hours. And I ended up on the porch of a man I've said 9 words to. Marcus didn't turn around. Good night, Claire. Good night, Marcus. He went down the hall. He checked on Lily. He lay on top of his covers in a room that read 88 degrees, hands folded on his chest like a man laid out in a coffin, and stared at the ceiling and thought, then, why didn't you ask him to fix it? Out of the mouths of babes. He was up at 5:40. He was always up at 5:40. Claire was already awake, sitting on the couch with the blanket folded squared off at the corners, like a woman who had never in her life left a blanket in a pile, and she had made coffee in his kitchen, in his old percolator, which nobody had touched since Nikki. Marcus stood in the doorway looking at that percolator for about 4 seconds longer than a man should look at a percolator. I'm sorry, Claire said immediately. I shouldn't have. It's fine. I couldn't find the, you have a manual percolator, Marcus. Who has a manual percolator? My wife did. The word came out of him like a nail out of a board. Rusty. Whole. Claire set the mug down. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. That's 4. I'm counting. You're counting. I'm counting, Marcus said, and took the coffee she poured him, and it was good, and that annoyed him in a way he did not have the vocabulary for. At 5:41 in the morning, they stood there, 2 adults, 1 kitchen, a box fan running in the next room. So he said, your air, what's it doing? Nothing. That's the problem. Nothing like blowing warm air or nothing like nothing. Nothing like nothing. No air, no sound, it's just off. Marcus took a drink of coffee. Inside unit or outside unit? I don't know what that means. The big metal box out back with a fan in the top. Is it spinning? I didn't go look. You didn't go look, Marcus repeated. It was midnight, Marcus. It was 104, and you didn't walk 20 feet to see if the box was spinning. I panicked. Okay, Claire's voice went up. First crack in the paint. I panicked. Am I allowed to panic? I woke up at 11, soaked through, and my phone said 104, and I sat on the edge of my bed and I could not think, Marcus. I couldn't figure out what a person does. And I thought the only person on this street I've ever seen do anything useful is the man across the road with a toolbox in his truck. And so I drove around for 2 hours, humiliated about it. And then I knocked. Marcus set his mug down. Okay, he said. Okay, I'll look at it. You don't have to. Claire, what? I've been fixing air conditioners since I was 19 years old, he said. I have never once in my life walked past a broken unit. It's not a favor. It's a compulsion. My wife used to say I'd stop at a stranger's house on Christmas morning. Claire looked at him. What? That's the second time you've mentioned her, she said. In 8 minutes. Marcus picked his mug back up. Yeah, he said. Well, he didn't get to it that morning. He got a call at 6:15 from dispatch. Mrs. Ruthie Coleman on Delano, 81 years old. No air since Tuesday. A granddaughter calling from Charlotte in tears. Marcus was in the truck by 6:20 with a travel mug and a shirt he'd found in the dryer. He was gone 11 hours. He came home at 5:40 in the evening with his hands cut in 2 places, having replaced a capacitor for free, having lied to Ruthie Coleman's face and told her the part was under warranty, having eaten nothing since coffee. And his house was cold. Marcus stopped in his own doorway. Cold. His house had not been cold in 14 days. Marcus's air conditioner was a 16-year-old unit he kept alive with prayer and stolen parts, and he ran it at 78 because 78 was what a man could afford when the light bill was the thing that could sink him. The house was 71 degrees. There was music playing, and his daughter was laughing. Laughing. Marcus stood in the doorway of his own house and listened to his daughter laugh and did not go in. He couldn't have told you why. He would have told you his hands hurt. He would have told you he was tired. The truth was that Lily Williams had not laughed like that, big and loud and unguarded the way a child laughs when the floor under her is solid in 3 years. And hearing it from his own porch felt like walking in on something private. Then Claire's voice from inside. Absolutely not. That is not how you spell it. Lily, it is. Lily, there is no W in restaurant. There's a W sound. That is okay. That's actually a great point. But no. Marcus went in. Claire was on the floor of his living room with his daughter's spelling homework still in yesterday's clothes, her hair up and pinned with a pencil. She had a legal pad. She had drawn a diagram. Hi, she said and stood up too fast. Hi, I paid your power bill. Marcus did not move. Daddy, Lily said. She turned it to 71. Marcus looked at Claire. Claire looked back at him with the expression of a woman who had rehearsed this and was watching the rehearsal fall apart in real time. Say something, she said. You paid my power bill. I was here all day. I ran your air conditioner all day. That's not free, and I know it's not free, so I looked at she faltered. It was on the counter, the bill. I didn't go through your things. It was on the counter, and it said past due, and How much, Marcus? How much, Claire? $412. The room made no sound except a 16-year-old compressor doing something it hadn't done in 14 days resting. Take it back, Marcus said. You can't take back a payment. Then I'll write you a check. On Friday, I'll write you a check. Marcus. Claire's voice went hard and Lily's head came up and Claire heard it and pulled the voice back down softer. It's $400. I spent more than that on a chair last month. An accent chair. I don't even sit in it. That's not the point. Then what's the point? The point, Marcus said, is that when I walk into my house at the end of a day, I need to know what everything in it costs and who paid for it. That's how I've kept this roof over her head for 3 years. I know the number on every single thing in here. That's not living. That is exactly living, Claire. That's what living costs. Dad, Lily's voice small. Marcus stopped. His daughter was sitting on the carpet with a pencil in her fist, looking up at him with her mother's exact face. Don't be mad at her, Lily said. It was cold. I got to do my homework and I wasn't sweaty. And Marcus Williams, 6'1", cut hands, 11 hours in an attic, stood in his own living room and could not think of one single thing to say to that. He went and washed his hands. He ran the water until it was cold, which took a while, and he stood at the sink with his palms under it and thought about the fact that his daughter had just told him out loud in front of a witness that she had spent 14 days doing her homework sweaty and he hadn't known. Or he had known, and he had called it what living costs. He came back out. Thank you, he said. Claire's shoulders came down about an inch. You're welcome. Friday, I write you a check. Half, he said. 206. That's the deal. Take it or I'm calling the power company and unpaying it. And don't tell me I can't because I've called that company at 11 o'clock at night and made them do things you would not believe. Claire looked at him for a long moment. 206, she said. 206. You are the most exhausting man I have ever met. You knocked on my door, Marcus said. That night after Lily went down, They sat on the front steps because inside was 71 and outside was 94, and Marcus had spent so long being hot that 71 felt like a lie he was telling himself. Across the street, Mrs. Doyle's porch light was on. "She's watching," Claire said. "She's always watching. Does that bother you? Does it bother you?" Claire considered it. "No," she said. "Should it?" "Different question," Marcus said. "Ask me if it bothers me." "Does it bother you?" "Yes." They sat with that. "Marcus," Claire said, "can I ask you something and you don't get mad?" "Number." "Okay, I'm asking anyway." She turned her mug in her hands. Ruthie Coleman. Marcus's head came around. "How do you know that name?" "Because your daughter talks a lot. She told me you fix Mrs. Ruthie's air conditioner for free. She told me you fix the Ortegas too, and Mr. Peets and somebody named Deacon Hollis, and that man on the corner with the dog." Claire watched him. "She says you don't take money from anybody on this street. She exaggerates." "Does she? She's 8, Marcus." Claire set the mug down. "There is a man on this street who works 2 jobs and can't pay a $400 power bill, and that same man fixes half the neighborhood for free. That's not a contradiction I can just let sit there. I design rooms for people who complain about drawer pulls, so explain it to me." Marcus was quiet a long time. "Nikki died in July," he said. Claire went very still. 3 years ago. 22 months from diagnosis, ovarian. He said it like a man reading off a work order. The last 3 weeks she was home hospice, and it was a summer like this one. Not this bad, but bad. And our unit went out. 16 years old even then. Compressor locked. And I'm an HVAC tech, Claire. I fix these things for a living, and I could not fix it because the part was $1,100, and I had $462 in the account. And I had a 5-year-old, and my wife was dying in a room that was 90 degrees. Claire's hand went over her mouth. "So I called everybody I knew," Marcus said. "Everybody, every supplier, every shop, every man I ever pulled a shift with. And nobody had it, or nobody had it free. And I'm standing in my kitchen at 1 in the morning on the phone begging, and Nikki calls me from the back." He stopped. Claire didn't say anything. That was the right call, and she seemed to know it. And she says, "Baby, come sit down. You're missing it." The compressor kicked on behind them. "You're missing it," Marcus said. That's what she said, meaning her, meaning the 3 weeks. I spent 4 days of the last 3 weeks of my wife's life on the phone about a compressor. "Marcus." Deacon Hollis showed up the next morning. Marcus's voice didn't change at all. 76 years old. He'd been calling around behind my back. He had a used unit off a teardown in his truck bed, and he and Pete and Ortega put it in my yard in 100 degrees, and Hollis wouldn't take $1. Wouldn't take $1, Claire. And I said, "Deacon, let me pay you." And he said, Marcus stopped. He said what? He said, "Son, you'll pay somebody. It just won't be me." Claire sat on the steps of a house across the street from her own and put both hands over her face. "So no," Marcus said, "I don't take money from anybody on this street. Not because I'm good, because I owe it. There's a difference, and don't ever mix them up." "Marcus, that is good. It's a debt," Marcus said. "Debts you pay. Good is when you had a choice." She was quiet for a long while. "Then how long?" "How long what?" "How long has your air been set to 78? Marcus laughed. It wasn't a good laugh. 3 years. "And Lily does her homework sweaty." Claire's voice was shaking, actually shaking. "I'm not attacking you. I sat on your floor today, and your kid was so happy about 71 degrees that she told me it was the best day of the summer." Her words. Best day of the summer because the house was cold. "Don't. I'm not." "You're doing the thing." Marcus stood up. "You're doing the thing where somebody comes in for one night and starts doing the math on my life. I know the math. I do the math every single morning at 5:40. I don't need it done at me. That's not what $412 is a week of night shifts," Marcus said. "That's what it is. That's what it costs. And you spend it on an accent chair you don't sit in, and I'm not mad about that. I'm really not. But do not sit on my steps and tell me my daughter is sweaty. I know she's sweaty. I have known she's sweaty for 3 years, and there was nothing I could do about it, and that is the single worst thing I know about myself. So don't." Claire stood up too. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. That's 5. Marcus exhaled. They stood there in the dark, 2 people who had known each other 9 words worth, 30 hours ago. "Your air," Marcus said. "Tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock before my first call. I'll go look at it." "Marcus, you don't." 6 o'clock, he said, and went inside. He didn't sleep. He lay there and thought about the sound his daughter made when she laughed, and about the fact that a stranger had heard it before he did, and about a percolator, and about Deacon Hollis saying, "You'll pay somebody, it just won't be me." And then at some point around 2 in the morning, His brain, which had been fixing air conditioners for 15 years and could no more be turned off than a dog can be told not to hear a whistle, went. No air, no sound, just off. Marcus opened his eyes. Nothing like nothing. He sat up. Because here's the thing about a 16-year-old unit dying in a heat wave. It screams first. The compressor locks and it hums and hums and hums, and then the breaker trips. The capacitor goes and the fan sits there buzzing like a hornet. The coil freezes and blows warm and drips and moans. 14 days, 41 calls, and every single one of them had made a noise before it quit. Air conditioners don't just stop. They complain and then they stop. No air, no sound. It's just off. That's not a broken unit. That's a unit with no power going to it. He was in her backyard at 5:58 in the morning with a flashlight in his teeth. Claire came out in a hoodie with her arms crossed barefoot in the grass watching him. Marcus, hold this. He handed her the flashlight and crouched at the condenser. A train 8 years old, clean, well kept, absolutely no reason on God's earth for it to be dead. He put his hand on the top grill. Cold. Not cold like working. Cold like it hadn't run in a while. Breaker panel, he said. We're inside. The hall closet. Not that one. He was already moving. The disconnect. Every unit has a little gray box on the wall right beside it. That's code. He found it 6 feet up on the siding right where it should be. The cover was hanging open. Marcus stopped. Marcus! He reached up very slowly. The disconnect pull was gone. Not tripped, not burned, not corroded. Gone. Pulled out of the slot and taken away so the outside unit had no power at all. So it would sit there dead silent in a 104-degree house, making exactly no sound and exactly no air. Marcus stood in his neighbor's backyard at 6:02 in the morning with his hand on an empty disconnect box. There was nothing wrong with Clare Bennett's air conditioner. Somebody had turned it off. He turned around. Claire was standing in the grass holding his flashlight, and she wasn't looking at the unit. She was looking at the fence line, at the gate which had a padlock on it. A padlock Marcus had watched her unlock from the outside 30 seconds ago. Claire, Marcus said, and his voice came out so level it scared him. Who has a key to your gate? And Clare Bennett, successful, independent, impossible to surprise, did not say a word. She just started to cry. It was 6:02 in the morning on Thursday, and Clare Bennett was crying in her own backyard with a flashlight still in her hand, and Marcus Williams did not move to comfort her. He stood at the disconnect box with his palm flat against the empty slot, and he waited because in 15 years of walking into other people's houses, he had learned that the truth comes out of a person. In the second sentence, never the first, and only if you leave a hole where the first sentence should have been. Claire, I know how this looks. You don't actually. He took the flashlight out of her hand gently because she was gripping it hard enough to shake. Who has a key to your gate? Nobody. Somebody stood right here, Marcus said. Somebody stood exactly where I'm standing and pulled a $100 part out of a box 6 feet off the ground, and then they walked back out through a locked gate. So either your air conditioner is haunted or somebody has a key. Claire. Who? And Clare Bennett said a name she had not said out loud in 11 months. Ethan Marsh. Marcus waited. He's my ex, she said. We were together 4 years. He moved out in August. He was supposed to give the keys back. He gave me keys back. He gave me a set. I watched him put them on the counter. Claire wiped her face with the sleeve of the hoodie, and it did nothing because it was already 91 degrees at 6 in the morning, and everything on her was already wet. I didn't think about copies. Who thinks about copies? At 6:09, Marcus put the flashlight down on the condenser, turned around and looked at her, way, the way he had not looked at her on the porch. How long has this been going on? What? Claire, a man does not pull a disconnect out of an air conditioner as his opening move. That's not step 1. That's step 9. What was step 1? She didn't answer. Claire. March, she said. March. The fridge. She laughed, and it was that same cracked laugh from the porch, and now Marcus understood what he had been hearing. I came home and everything in my freezer was thawed. Everything. And the fridge was unplugged, and I stood in my kitchen for 20 minutes trying to remember if I'd done it, if I'd bumped it, I don't know. If I'd unplugged my own refrigerator and forgotten, because that is easier to believe than the other thing. What's the other thing? That a man I slept next to for 4 years has a key to my house and comes in when I'm at work. The compressor across the street kicked on. Marcus's compressor, 71 degrees for his kid, $412 of a stranger's money. And he heard it from 100 feet away. Because his ears were tuned to that sound, the way other men's ears were tuned to their own baby crying. What else, he said. Marcus. What else, Claire? My mother's ring. She said it fast like ripping tape off skin. It was in a dish on my dresser. It was there on a Tuesday and it was gone on a Friday, and I tore that apartment apart for 6 hours. And then 2 weeks later, it was back in the dish exactly where it had been. Marcus felt something cold go down the back of his neck in 91-degree heat. It came back. It came back. That's worse, Marcus said. I know it's worse. Her voice broke right in the middle. You think I don't know it's worse? Taking it is theft. Putting it back is a message. Putting it back means I was here and I can be here again. And there is not one thing you can do about it. At 6:14, Marcus asked the question he already knew the answer to. Did you call the police? Twice. And Claire smiled. It was the worst thing Marcus had seen all week, and he had spent the week in attics. The first officer was very nice, she said. He wrote it down. He asked if anything was taken, and I said no because it had come back. He asked if there was forced entry, and I said no because there wasn't. He asked if my ex had ever hit me, and I said no because he never did. Marcus, he never once put a hand on me. He's too smart for that. And the officer closed his notebook and said, Ma'am, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here. And the second time, a different officer told me that a man having a key to an apartment he used to live in is a civil matter. She spread her hands. A civil matter. Like it's a fence dispute, like it's a parking space. Marcus turned back to the box. He looked at the empty slot for a long moment. Wednesday night, he said. 11:47. Yes. You woke up hot. Yes. And you knew, Marcus said. You knew the second you woke up. You didn't need a thermometer. You woke up in the dark in a hot room, and your first thought wasn't my air conditioner broke. Your first thought was, he's been here. Claire's mouth opened and nothing came out. That's why you didn't go look at the unit, Marcus said. That's why you didn't walk 20 feet, because you were not going to walk into your own backyard in the dark. That's why you drove around for 2 hours. I couldn't go back in, Claire whispered. I couldn't go back inside my own house. I sat in a grocery store parking lot with the doors locked and the engine running from midnight to 2 in the morning like a crazy person. And then I drove down this street, and yours was the only house on the whole block with a light on. At 6:19, Marcus Williams understood that a woman had not knocked on his door for a couch. You didn't come to me about air conditioning, he said. Number. You came because there was a man in the house. Claire looked at the grass. Say it, Claire. Yes, she said. Yes, I came because there was a man in the house, and I hate that. I hate it so much. I have spent my entire adult life building a life where I do not need a man in the house. And at midnight on the worst night of the year, I stood on a porch and knocked because there was a man in the house, and I thought that one has a kid. That one won't be. That one is. She stopped. That one is what Marcus said. Safe, she said. I thought that one is safe. Marcus laughed. One syllable. No humor in it at all. What she said. What's funny? Nothing's funny. Marcus, what? You knocked on the door of a black man in this neighborhood at 11:47 at night. Marcus said, because you thought his house was the safe one. Claire, you don't know what you did. I don't understand. I know you don't, Marcus said. That's the whole thing. You don't. At 6:31, he was up on a step stool with the cover off the disconnect box, and Claire was standing behind him holding his coffee like it was a job she'd been assigned. Can you fix it? She asked. I can fix it in 4 minutes. Then why aren't you fixing it? Because if I fix it, Marcus said he comes back and pulls it again, and now he knows somebody's helping you. The cup stopped halfway to her mouth. So what do we do? Marcus said it slowly. I'm sorry. What do I do? No. He came down off the stool. No, you had it right. That was the correct word. That's the problem, Claire. I've got an 8-year-old asleep across the street. He wiped his hands on his pants. You understand what I'm saying to you? I've got an 8-year-old in a truck with my name on the side and a boss who already thinks I'm slow, and you're asking me to get in between you and a man who's been in your house 4 times since March, and I don't even know his last name. Marsh, she said. Ethan Marsh. I don't know him. No, Claire said. You don't. Something in the way she said it made Marcus stop. But he said, but what you said that like there's a but. Claire set the coffee down on the condenser. His father is Preston Marsh, she said. Marcus didn't recognize the name, not right away. It sat in the air for a second like a wasp nobody had noticed yet. Marsh Development, Claire said. They own the medical park off Cascade. They own the thing they're building where the Sunset Apartments used to be. They own the strip on Delano. Marcus's head came up so fast his neck cracked. Delano. Yes, they bought Delano in April. Ruthie Coleman lives on Delano, Marcus said. 81 years old. Been in that house since 1971. I know, Claire said very quietly. I've seen the plan set. At 6:38, Marcus Williams put both hands on top of a condenser unit and leaned on it and looked at the ground and did not say anything for 11 seconds. And Clare Bennett stood there and let him have all 11. My biggest project, she said. That's what it is, the one I told you about. Marsh Development retained my firm to do the interiors on the whole Delano redevelopment. They retained us in April, and Ethan and I broke up in August of last year. And if you're doing the math, I'm doing the math. They hired me 8 months after I left his son. Why? Because Preston Marsh does not lose things, Clare said. He acquires them. That's not a metaphor, Marcus. That's how he actually talks. He told me at a dinner in May. He said, Clare, you're the best thing Ethan ever brought home, and it would be a shame to let that walk away. Marcus straightened up. He was talking about your work. Was he? Neither of them said anything. Then Marcus said, fix the gate lock today, not the air, the gate. Get a new one at the store, put it in with your own hands today. Okay. And your door locks. Okay. And Clare. He picked up his flashlight. Tonight you're on the couch again. Marcus, I can't keep. Tonight you're on the couch again, Marcus said, and walked out through her gate and did not look back. Because if he had looked back, he would have seen Mrs. Doyle's blinds move, and he did not need to see it to know. At 11:40 that morning, Marcus was in an attic on Delano Street with a flashlight in his teeth, and his shirt stuck to him like a second skin replacing a blower motor in a house that did not belong to Ruthie Coleman anymore. He came down the ladder, and she was standing at the bottom with a glass of ice water. 81 years old, 5 feet nothing, and she handed it to him the way she had handed it to him 11 times before. Miss Ruthie, Marcus said, can I ask you something? You can ask. Who do you pay rent to? She didn't answer right away. Miss Ruthie, baby, drink your water. Miss Ruthie, who do you pay rent to? And Ruthie Coleman, who had lived in that house since 1971, who had buried a husband out of that front room, said, I own this house. Yes, ma'am. I own this house, she said again, and her chin came up, and Marcus watched an 81-year-old woman lie to him with her whole body. I paid it off in 1994. Yes, ma'am. Marcus Williams, drink your water. He drank his water. He put the glass in her sink and washed it because that's what you did in Ruthie Coleman's house. And on the way out, he stopped at the front window and looked at the street, and there were 3 houses on Delano with a small green sign in the yard, and every sign said the same thing in letters too small to read from the sidewalk. He walked out and read one. Marsh. At 1:20 in the afternoon, Marcus called Clare from the cab of his truck with the engine running and the air blowing on his face. Marcus. How many houses, he said. What? On Delano. How many houses are in the plan set? Silence on the line. Clare. 22, she said. 22. Marcus, I don't do acquisitions. I do interiors. I get the buildings after. How many of them still have people in them? I don't know. Guess. I don't know, Marcus. Guess Clare. 9, she said. 9 as of the last set I saw in June. Marcus sat in a truck in 103 degrees with the phone against his ear and said nothing for so long that she said his name 3 times. Marcus. Marcus. That woman gave me a glass of ice water, he said. What? She's been giving me a glass of ice water for 4 years, and today she lied to my face about who owns her house because she's ashamed. His voice did something he hated. He clamped it down. 81 years old, and she's ashamed, in front of the air conditioning man. Marcus, I didn't. I know you didn't. I didn't know. I know you didn't, Marcus said. That's not the part that's killing me. Then what is? There's a man who took your mama's ring and put it back, Marcus said. And that same man's father is the reason Ruthie Coleman lies about her own front door. And you and me are the only 2 people on God's green earth who know both of those things at the same time. At 4:50, Marcus pulled onto his street, and there was a police car in front of his house. He did not remember parking. He remembered opening the truck door, and his legs already moving, and the heat coming up off the asphalt through his boots, and the very particular silence of a street where every single porch is empty and every single blind is bent. There were 2 officers. One was on his walkway. One was at the door. And Clare was standing in the doorway of Marcus Williams's house with her arms crossed over her chest, and behind her, in the dark of the hall, holding the doorframe with both hands, was Lily. Marcus made himself walk, not run, walk, hands out from his sides, empty fingers spread at a pace he had practiced since he was 15 years old, without ever once calling it practice. Afternoon, officers. This your residence, sir? Yes, sir. Marcus Williams. My ID is in my back left pocket. I'm going to reach with 2 fingers. You don't need to do that. I'd like to if it's all right. He got it out. He handed it over. The officer barely looked at it. We got a welfare call, the officer said. Anonymous caller stated a woman had been at this address for 2 days and, quote, hadn't been seen leaving. Marcus did not look across the street. He wanted to look across the street more than he had wanted anything in 3 years. He did not look across the street. That's Miss Bennett, he said. She lives at 1147. Her air conditioning's out. She's been staying on my couch. Ma'am, the officer called. You hear of your own free will. And Clare Bennett said, I'm sorry. What is your name and badge number, please? Marcus closed his eyes. Because I'd like it in the report, Clare said, coming down off the step. And her voice was not the voice from the backyard at all. It was a voice from a conference room cold as a knife. I have called your department twice in 5 months to report that a man has been letting himself into my home, and both times I was told there was nothing to be done, twice, and nobody drove out. And today, an anonymous caller says a white woman is inside a black man's house, and there are 2 of you in the driveway in 90 minutes. So I would like your name and badge number, and I would like it in the report. And I would like the report to note that the woman in question answered the door herself in daylight and told you she was fine. Nobody said anything. I'm fine, Clare said. Thank you for checking. At 4:56, the patrol car pulled off the curb, and Marcus Williams stood in his own driveway, holding his own driver's license in his own hand, shaking so hard he had to put it in his pocket to hide it. Marcus, don't. Get in the house. Marcus the first was trying to, get in the house, Clare. Please, right now. They got in the house. He shut the door. He put his back against it. Lily was standing in the hall exactly where she had been standing at 11:47 on Wednesday night, Daddy. Baby, go to your room. Daddy, did they? Lily, room, now. She went. The door closed. It didn't slam. That was worse. Marcus turned around and looked at Clare Bennett and said in a voice so quiet it barely moved the air, Don't you ever do that in front of my daughter again. Do what? Talk to police like that. Marcus, I know what they were. They had no right to. I know what they had, Marcus said. I have known what they had since I was 15 years old, and my Uncle Ray drove me around this city for 2 hours explaining exactly what they had. I know it better than you will ever know it, and that is exactly why I stood on my own walkway with my hands out to my sides like a fool in front of my child and said, yes, sir. Claire's mouth was open. You got to be brave for 11 seconds, Marcus said. You get to be brave for 11 seconds and drive back to your firm. I got to live here after. My kid got to watch her daddy do that, and then she's got to walk to school past those same houses on Monday. That's not fair. No, Marcus agreed. It's not. At 6:40 in the evening, Lily Williams came out of her room without being called and sat down on the floor by her father's feet. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Was that because Miss Clare is white? Marcus Williams had spent 3 years dreading 100 different questions. He had rehearsed most of them. He had never once rehearsed this one because he had assumed he had until she was 12. Yeah, he said. Okay, Lily said. And that was it. She didn't cry. She didn't ask why. She just filed it the way an 8-year-old files the fact that the stove is hot, and Marcus felt something in his chest tear straight down the middle. Lily, you're not mad. I already knew, she said. Malik's dad got pulled over at the grocery store. She got up and went to get her spelling list, and Clare Bennett stood in the kitchen doorway with her hand over her mouth and did not make one sound. At 8:05, after Lily was down, they sat on the steps again, because they were both the kind of people who could not be in a room with something unsaid. Marcus. Yeah, I was wrong. You were right, Marcus said. That's the thing. Every word you said to that man was right. Right and wrong aren't the same thing as safe. That's a terrible sentence. It's a terrible country sometimes. She turned her mug in her hands. It wasn't Mrs. Doyle, she said. Marcus's head came around. What? The call. It wasn't Mrs. Doyle. Claire, that woman's porch light. I know about the porch light. Claire took a breath. I walked over there at 5:30 while you were in with Lily. You did what? I knocked on her door and I asked her. Marcus put both hands over his face. And she said, Claire went on. She said, baby, I've lived across from that man for 6 years, and I've watched him carry my groceries in, and if you think I called the police on Marcus Williams, you can get off my porch. Marcus did not lower his hands. She said the light's on because her husband died in that house in 2019, Claire said, and she can't sleep in the dark anymore. Stop. She said Marcus put a window unit in her back bedroom for free and wouldn't take a pie. Claire, stop. You've been afraid of a woman who leaves a light on because she's scared, Claire said, for 6 years. At 8:14, Marcus Williams said, then who called? And the whole street went quiet at once the way it does at dark in July when the cicadas take a breath. Claire didn't answer. Claire. There's only one person, she said, who knew I'd been here 2 days. Marcus stood up. He'd have to be watching. Yes, he'd have to have been watching your house Wednesday night to know you left. Yes, he'd have to have followed you. Yes, he watched you knock on my door, Marcus said. Claire's hands were shaking so badly the mug rattled against the step when she set it down. He knows where I live, Marcus said. That man knows my address. That man watched my house for 2 days and then called the police on me and my daughter. And he did it in a way where I can't prove one single thing because it's anonymous and it's a welfare check. And if I ever say a word about it to anybody, what does it sound like? It sounds like a man with a story, Claire whispered. It sounds like a man with a story, Marcus said. At 9:12, Marcus called his sister Renee and asked her if Lily could stay the weekend, and Renee said yes before he finished the sentence. And then she said, "Marcus, what's going on?" "Nothing." "Marcus, I'll tell you Saturday." "Marcus Anthony Williams." "Renee, I'm asking." There was a long pause on the line. 6 years I've been telling you to let somebody help you, she said. 6 years. And the first time you call me, it's to hide your child. That's not. Is she a good woman? Renee, is she a good woman, Marcus? Marcus looked through the doorway at a stranger who was on his living room floor with his kid's spelling list and a legal pad drawing a diagram at 9 at night on a Thursday for a child that was not hers. Yeah, he said. I think she might be. Then quit being a coward, his sister said, and hung up. At 10:58, Claire said out of nowhere, I need to tell you the last thing. Marcus set his mug down slowly. There's a last thing. There's a last thing. The project, she said. The Delano project. I got an email Tuesday, 2 days before my air conditioner broke. She stopped, started again. They moved me to a support role, design support, off the lead. Why? The email said client preference. Client preference. Preston Marsh's office called my partner directly and said they had concerns about my focus. Claire's voice was flat and dead level. That was Tuesday. My air went out Wednesday. He took the job on Tuesday and he took the air on Wednesday. And I want you to understand something, Marcus. I want you to really understand it because I didn't until an hour ago. Understand what? He didn't do it to make me suffer, Claire said. He did it to make me leave. Marcus went very still. He knew I'd have to go somewhere, she said. He knew a woman with no air at midnight goes somewhere and he wanted to see where. To see who I'd run to see if there was anyone. And you ran to me, Marcus said. I ran to you, Claire said. And there was nobody else. 400 contacts, 11 years in this city, and I got in my car, and I drove for 2 hours and there was nobody. And he was behind me the whole time watching me find that out. At 11:47 at night on Thursday, exactly 24 hours to the minute from the night, a woman knocked on his door. Marcus Williams heard a knock on his door. He looked at the clock first. That's what you do. Then he looked for the bat. Then Claire said from the couch in a voice with nothing left in it, Marcus, don't open it. Marcus opened it. There was a man on his porch in a golf shirt, clean-shaved, nice watch, the kind of man who smiled with his whole face and none of his eyes, the kind of man who had never in his life had to keep his hands out from his sides. He was holding something in his right hand, holding it up casually like a set of car keys. It was an air conditioner disconnect pull. Evening, Ethan Marsh said. I think you've got something of mine inside. Marcus did not take the disconnect. He looked at it up there in the man's hand swinging a little, and then he looked at the man's face, and then he did the only thing that 15 years and one Uncle Ray and one 8-year-old, asleep in a back bedroom, had trained into him. He put both hands in his pockets. You need to get off my porch, he said. That's not very neighborly. I'm not your neighbor. No, Ethan Marsh agreed pleasantly. You're not. At 11:48, Claire came up behind Marcus's shoulder and Marcus felt her there before he heard her, and he moved one step sideways so that he was between her and the doorframe, and he did it without thinking about it. And he would think about that later for a long time. Ethan. Hey, Claire. Ethan, what are you doing? Returning your property. He held the disconnect a little higher. Found it in the yard. Landscapers probably. They're rough with equipment. You should really complain. Get off this man's porch. I'm having a conversation. You're standing on the porch of a man you called the police on, Claire said. And Ethan Marsh's face did something almost too small to see. A flicker, not guilt, delight. Called the police, he repeated. Wow, okay. Claire, do you hear yourself? Don't, because that's a serious allegation. That's the kind of thing you'd want to be able to prove, Ethan said, before you go saying it out loud in front of a witness. At 11:50, Marcus said, what's your name? Ethan looked at him like a piece of furniture had spoken. I'm sorry. Your name, Marcus said. You know mine. It's on the mailbox. It's on my truck. It's on the report a police officer wrote about my house at 4:50 this afternoon. You know my name, my address, and what I look like with my hands out to the sides in my own driveway. So I'd like your name. Ethan. Ethan what? Just Ethan's fine. See, that's how I know, Marcus said. Now what? That I'm scared. The porch got very quiet. Excuse me. A man who's not scared gives you his whole name, Marcus said. A man who's not scared says, Ethan Marsh, nice to meet you. But you came here with a part in your hand and half a name in your mouth because half a name isn't a threat. Half a name's a joke, and if this ever gets said out loud in a room with a stenographer in it, you don't want to be a joke. Ethan Marsh smiled with his whole face. You're smarter than you look, he said. No, Marcus said. I look exactly this smart. You just weren't looking. At 11:52, Ethan set the disconnect down on the porch rail, gently like a man leaving a tip. I'll tell you why I'm actually here, he said, since we're being direct. Ethan, don't, Claire said. Claire. I'm talking to the man. Ethan put his hands in his own pockets, mirroring, and Marcus clocked it and hated it. Do you know what my father does? I'm learning. He buys things people can't hold on to. That's a hell of a way to say it out loud. It's a hell of a business. Ethan shrugged. Delano's 22 parcels. 9 of them are still occupied by people who think a paid-off mortgage in 1994 means something in 2026 when the tax assessment goes from $1,100 a year to $9,400 a year because somebody built a medical park at the end of the block. Marcus's jaw set. You know a woman named Ruthie Coleman. Get off my porch, sweet lady, Ethan said. My father's office has her file on a desk with about 40 others, and I want to be very clear with you because I think you're a man who appreciates clarity. Nobody's doing anything to Miss Coleman. Nobody's doing one single thing. The county is. The math is. All my father has to do is wait and be the only person willing to write her a check when she can't pay it, and she will thank him. She will hug his neck. That's how it works. That's how it always works. Nobody has to be the bad guy. You just have to be the one still standing there when everybody else has to leave. At 11:54, Marcus Williams said, Why are you telling me this? Because you fix her air conditioner for free. So you've been keeping her comfortable, Ethan said, for 4 years, and a comfortable woman doesn't sell. Marcus did not move. So I want you to know, Ethan went on, that everything you've been doing, every Saturday, every part you paid for out of your own pocket, all it's done is make her sit there 4 more years while her tax bill went up. He tilted his head. You've been holding her hand in the road, Mr. Williams, and you're going to tell yourself it was kindness right up until the day the truck comes. Claire made a sound behind Marcus like she'd been hit in the stomach. Ethan, that is the single most disgusting thing. It's arithmetic, Claire. It's disgusting. Those aren't opposites. At 11:56, Marcus stepped out onto his own porch and pulled the door most of the way shut behind him and lowered his voice. And it was the lowering that made Ethan Marsh take a half step back. And Ethan Marsh had not planned on doing that. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said. Is that right? You're going to go home. And tomorrow morning or next week or in a month, you're going to remember that you stood on a man's porch at midnight and told him exactly what you're doing and exactly how it works and exactly why nobody can stop it. And you're going to think that was fine, because who's he going to tell? Well, Ethan said, who are you going to tell? Nobody, Marcus said. There we go. I don't have to tell anybody, Marcus said. You did it on a porch. He tapped the door frame twice. Doorbell camera. Second thing I put in this house after my wife died. First was the deadbolt. The silence lasted 4 full seconds. Marcus watched a man's face do arithmetic. You don't have a camera, Ethan said. Okay, there's no camera on that door. Then go on and stand there a while longer, Marcus said. Say some more. At 11:58, Ethan Marsh laughed. It was a good laugh. It sounded almost real. That's good, he said. That's really good. I like you. Claire, he called past him, he's good. He's genuinely good. You always did have taste. And he walked down the steps and across the yard and got into a car, parked 4 houses down a car. Marcus had walked past at 5:15 that evening without ever once looking at it. At 12:01 in the morning, Marcus came back inside and locked the deadbolt and stood there with his forehead against the door. Marcus, don't talk yet. Marcus, you don't have a doorbell camera. I know I don't have a doorbell camera, Claire. Then what? Marcus turned around. His hands were shaking again, the same way they'd shaken in the driveway at 4:56, and he looked at them like they belonged to somebody he was disappointed in. He'll never know, Marcus said. That's the whole thing. He'll never know if I do or not. Not for certain. He's got to go home tonight and lie in his bed and run that porch back in his head and count every single word he said. And he can't check. He can't ask. He can't do one thing about it. You bluffed him. I gave him what he gave you, Marcus said. A thing you can't prove and can't forget. Claire sat down on this arm of the couch, very suddenly, like her legs had quit. He put my mother's ring back, she said. And you just... Yeah, Marcus, that's the first time in 11 months she said that anybody has done anything about it. At 12:04, Marcus said, Claire, I need you to hear something and I need you to not fight me. Okay? He's not going to come back at me. You don't know that. He's not, Marcus said. That's not what he does. He doesn't come at people. He waits for the math. He rubbed his face with both hands. He's going to go at my job. Claire looked up. What? He knows the truck, Marcus said. He knows the company name. He watched me get out of it. And a man like that doesn't throw a punch. He makes a phone call. My boss is a man named Doug Petrella, who has been looking for a reason since 2021. A reason for what? To not have me on the good calls, Marcus said. Buckhead, Vining's houses where the lady of the house opens the door and sees me and calls the office. Doug says it's routing. It's not routing. Claire didn't say anything. So he doesn't have to say anything about you, Marcus said. He doesn't have to say a word about you and me. He just has to have somebody say the word incident. That's it. One word. Incident at a customer's residence. And then Doug's got what he's been waiting for. And it isn't even his fault. And everybody gets to be a good person, and I'm the one who's out. At 12:07, Clare Bennett stood up. Then I'll call his father, she said. I have Preston Marsh's cell number. He gave it to me at a dinner. I can call him right now tonight and tell him exactly what his son... Claire, listen to me. What do you think happens, Marcus said, when you call a man at midnight and tell him his son's been letting himself into your house? Claire opened her mouth. You've had 11 months to call him, Marcus said gently. You never called him? Why didn't you call him Claire? And Clare Bennett stood in a living room at 71 degrees with her arms wrapped around her own ribs and said, because he already knows. At 12:09, Marcus sat down. Say that again. He already knows. Her voice was so quiet the box fan almost took it. That dinner in May when he said I was the best thing Ethan ever brought home, he said something else after. He said, you know, Ethan's got a way of holding on to things. And he laughed. And I laughed. Marcus, I laughed because I was at a table with the man who was about to hire my firm for the biggest job of my life, and I laughed. He was warning me. She said that was a warning. That was a man telling me I know what my son is and I'm not going to do anything about it, and neither are you, and here's a contract. Marcus put his head in his hands. So I took the job, Claire said. I took the job. Say it. Say what? Say it to me, Claire said, because I've been saying it to myself since Tuesday. I'm not going to say it. Say it. No, Marcus said. Because I know exactly what you did. You looked at a bad man and you did the math and you decided you could live with it because the number was good. Claire's face came apart. That's not a judgment, Marcus said. Claire, look at me. That's not a judgment. That's the most ordinary thing a person does. I looked at Doug Petrella in 2021 and I did the same math. I've been doing it every day for 5 years. It's not evil. It's just what it costs. That's what you said to me, Claire whispered. On the steps, that's exactly what you said. What living costs. Yeah, Marcus said. Turns out it's the same sentence in both our houses, just different numbers. At 12:20, Claire said, I have the plan set. Marcus lifted his head. What? The Delano plan set. All of it. Phasing unit counts, the interiors package, the whole thing. She was already moving toward her bag. And the correspondence, Marcus. I have 8 months of emails, and I have the Tuesday email, and I have a call log from a meeting in June where a man from acquisition said, and I am quoting, we're not in a hurry, the assessments do the work. Marcus stood up. Claire. He said it on a conference call with 12 people on it because he thought it was fine, because everybody at that table thought it was fine. Because it is fine, Marcus, that's the thing. It's completely legal. Then it's no good to you. It's no good in a courtroom, Claire said. I didn't say courtroom. At 12:22 in the morning, Marcus Williams looked at his neighbor across a living room and understood what she was actually offering and felt the bottom of his stomach go. You'd never work again, he said. In this city. In this city, in this industry, anywhere, Claire. He'd make one call. I know. He'd make one call. Yes. You've got 11 years, 12 in November. You'd lose all of it. Yes. For 9 houses on a street you've never set foot on. And Clare Bennett said, for an 81-year-old woman who lied to your face about her own front door because she was ashamed in front of the air conditioning man. Marcus turned away from her. He put his hand on the wall. Marcus, give me a second. Marcus, say something. I'm asking for a second, Claire. At 12:26, he turned back around and his eyes were wet, and he didn't do one thing about it. No, he said. What? No, Marcus, you're not doing it. Why? Because it's Thursday, Marcus said. Because it's been 36 hours. Because 2 days ago I had said 9 words to you, and now you're standing in my living room offering to set your whole life on fire for a woman you've never met. And Claire, that's not conviction. That's adrenaline. That's a woman who found out at 6 o'clock this morning that a man's been in her house since March and hasn't slept since. Don't do that. I'm not doing anything to you. You're doing exactly what everybody does, Claire said, and her voice went up all the way up the first time she had ever let it. You're telling me I don't know my own mind. That is what he did. That is what he did for 4 years. Every single time I said something was wrong, he'd tilt his head and say, Are you sure? Are you sure, Claire? "You've had a long week, Claire?" And I'd stand there and check my own math in front of him. And every time, every single time, I'd come out thinking maybe I'd unplugged my own refrigerator. The room rang. "Don't you ask me if I'm sure," she said. At 12:29, Marcus Williams said, "Okay, okay." He put both hands up. "You're right. I'm sorry." "That's one. You're counting." "I'm counting," Marcus said. And Claire laughed and then immediately put her hand over her mouth because it was 12:29 in the morning, and there was a child asleep down the hall. At 12:35, sitting on the floor with her back against the couch, Claire said, "So what do we do?" "We," Marcus said. "Yes, we." She waited for him to fight her. He didn't fight her. "Tonight, nothing," he said. "Tomorrow I go to work. Friday I write you a check for $26. "Oh my God, $26. "Marcus, there is a man." "I know there's a man," Marcus said. "There's always a man." "Claire, you don't understand what I'm telling you. I'm not telling you to give up. I'm telling you what I've got. I've got a kid and a job and a truck note and a mortgage and one uncle who's dead and a sister in Decatur and about $1,100, and that's the whole army. That's everything I can put in the field. So we don't go at him tomorrow. We go at him when we can hit him. And until then, we do not give him one single thing to use. So we do nothing." "We do nothing loud," Marcus said. "There's a difference. Deacon Hollis taught me that with a compressor and a truck bed." At 12:44, Claire said, "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "You're going to anyway." "When you were on the porch with him," she turned her head, "you said doorbell camera. Second thing you put in the house after your wife died. First was the deadbolt." "Yeah." "Was that a lie too?" Marcus was quiet for a second. "The deadbolt's real," he said. "Why'd you put in a deadbolt?" And Marcus Williams said something he had never said to his sister, his pastor, or himself. "Because for about 4 months after Nikki died, he said I couldn't sleep unless I knew the door was locked. And I'd get up 2-3 times a night and I'd check it. And I'd go back to bed and I'd lie there and think, did I actually check it or did I dream that? And I'd get up and check it again." Claire didn't move. And one night Lily came out at 2 in the morning and found her daddy standing in the dark holding a door handle, Marcus said. 5 years old. And she said, "Daddy, are you locking the door or are you leaving?" "Oh my God." "So I put in a deadbolt with a thumb turn you can see from the hall," Marcus said, so she could look, so she could stand in her doorway and look down the hall and see it turned so she'd know. Claire had both hands over her face. "I'm telling you this," Marcus said, "because I want you to understand what I am. I'm not brave. I'm a man who bought a lock he could see from the hallway. And you came to my door at 11:47 at night because you thought it was the safe house. And you were right. And it's the safe house because a 5-year-old asked me if I was leaving." At 12:51, Claire said into her hands, "Marcus, I unplugged my own refrigerator." "What?" "That's what I told myself in March for 3 days." She lowered her hands. "I want you to understand what he took. He didn't take a ring, Marcus. He took the part of me that knows what's true. I couldn't trust my own hands. I stood in my kitchen, and I didn't know if my own hands had done a thing an hour before. And then tonight, she said you stood on a porch and told a man there was a camera, and there is no camera, and I watched him walk away, not knowing what was real." She looked at him. That's the first time she said in 11 months that it was on the other side. At 1:02 in the morning, Marcus's phone lit up on the arm of the couch. He looked at it. He didn't pick it up. "Marcus, it's Doug, my boss. It's 1 in the morning. "Marcus, don't." He picked it up. "This is Marcus." He listened for 11 seconds. Then he said, "Yes, sir." Then he said, "No, sir, that's not." Then he said, Doug, can I, Doug?" Then he said, "Yes, sir," and he hung up. Claire was on her feet. "Marcus." Marcus set the phone down on the arm of the couch, very carefully, like it might go off. "Marcus, what?" "Complaint," he said. His voice had gone completely flat, which was the worst thing Claire had heard yet. Worse than the driveway, worse than the porch. Resident on Delano Street says the tech performed unauthorized work and misrepresented a warranty. Claire's hand went to her mouth. "Ruthie Coleman's house," she said. "Ruthie Coleman doesn't own that house," Marcus said. "That's the whole thing. She doesn't own it. I've been going into a house for 4 years and doing free work in a building that as of April belongs to Marsh Development. And I told an 81-year-old woman a part was on warranty when it wasn't because I paid for it out of my own pocket. And Claire, that is a lie, in writing, on a work order with my signature on it." "That's not—" "It's a false warranty claim on company paperwork," Marcus said. 11 times in 4 years. "They can't." "They can," Marcus said. "It's true. That's the beauty of it. It's completely true." At 1:06, Claire said, "What did Doug say?" "Suspended pending review, pending Monday." That's 4 days, Marcus said. That's 4 days to find out if I'm an HVAC tech or a man with an 8-year-old and $1,100. He sat down on the couch, and then he didn't sit. He sort of went down and he put his elbows on his knees. He didn't have to touch me, Marcus said. You understand? He didn't have to do one thing to me. He just went and found the nicest thing I ever did and handed it to my boss. At 1:11, Lily Williams' voice came down the hall. Daddy. Marcus's head came up so fast. Baby, go back to bed. Daddy, why is Miss Clare crying? She's not crying, baby. Yes, I am, Claire said. Marcus looked at her. Don't, Claire said. Don't tell her. It's fine. Marcus, don't. She already knew about Malik's dad. At 1:13 in the morning, Marcus Williams sat on his couch and looked at his daughter standing in the hall in a nightgown with a cartoon otter on it, holding the doorframe with both hands, in the exact spot she had stood the night all of this started. Lily, he said, come here. She came. She sat on the couch between them, which neither of them had planned and which neither of them ever forgot. Baby, Marcus said, Daddy might not have his job for a little while. Claire made a small sound. Because of the police, Lily asked. No, because of a man. Lily thought about that. Is he the one who broke Miss Clare's air? The room stopped. Claire's head came around so fast. Lily, Marcus said very carefully. What did you say? The man who broke Miss Clare's air. Lily said like it was the dumbest question anyone had ever asked her. Lily, Marcus said, how do you know somebody broke it? Because I saw him. At 1:15 in the morning, nobody in that living room breathed. Baby, Marcus said, look at Daddy. When did you see him? Wednesday. Wednesday. When I was getting my bike, Lily said. From the side. You said don't leave it in the front. So I put it on the side by the fence, and I went to get it. And there was a man in Miss Clare's yard on a little ladder. Lily, did he have a hat? Yeah. What time? I don't know. Was it light or dark? Light, Lily said. It was still hot. It was before you got home. Claire had gone the color of paper, Lily, Marcus said, and he had to stop and start again. Baby, did he see you? And Lily Williams said, he waved at me. Claire made a sound like something tearing. He waved at me, Lily said. And I waved back because you said be polite to grown-ups on the street. And he said hi, and I said hi. And then he asked me a question. Marcus could not speak. What did he ask you? Claire said. And Lily Williams, age 8, said, he asked me if my daddy was home a lot. Marcus Williams did not raise his voice. That was the thing Claire would remember later when she went back over that night the way you go back over a car accident. He did not raise his voice. He did not stand up. He did not grab his daughter by the shoulders. He got down on the floor in front of the couch so that his eyes were lower than his kid's eyes, and he put his hands flat on his own knees where she could see them, and he said, Baby, you're not in trouble. I know you're not in trouble, not even a little bit. Daddy, I know. Okay, he breathed. Tell me about the hat. At 1:17 in the morning, Lily Williams described a man in her neighbor's backyard with a level of detail that made a grown woman put her fist against her own mouth to keep from making noise. A blue hat with a white letter on the front, but not the Braves letter, a different one, curly. A gray shirt with buttons, but no collar. Sunglasses on top of the hat and also on his face, which Lily specifically noted was weird. 2 sunglasses. A little ladder, not a big one, the kind that folds. Not a truck. A car. A dark car parked not in Miss Clare's driveway, but on the street past the Ortegas. How long was he there? Marcus asked. I don't know. Was it a long time or a short time? I got my bike and I rode to the stop sign and back, and he was still there. How many times to the stop sign? Lily counted on her fingers. 4. At 1:19, Claire said from somewhere far away, That's 20 minutes. Lily. Marcus kept his voice exactly where it was. Did he touch you? Number. Did he come close to you? He was at the fence. Which side of the fence? His side, Lily said. He stayed on his side. Daddy, he was nice. And Marcus Williams closed his eyes for 1 full second and then opened them again. Okay, he said. What else did he say? He said, Is your daddy home a lot? And I said, No, because you're at work all the time. And he said, That must be hard. And I said, It's okay because I go to Aunt Renee's. And he said, Oh, does she live close? And I said, Decatur. And then he said, She stopped. Baby. He said, You seem like a smart girl. And then I went inside because it was hot, Lily said. And I forgot. At 1:22 in the morning, Clare Bennett stood up and walked into the kitchen and turned on the faucet and stood there with both hands on the edge of the sink and didn't run any water through her hands at all. Marcus put his daughter back to bed. It took 11 minutes. She asked if the man was going to come back, and he said no. She asked if that was a real no or a daddy no, and he said it was a real no. And it was the first time he had ever lied straight into her face without one flicker in his voice. and he understood walking back down that hall that he had just crossed, something he was never going to get back across. He came into the kitchen at 1:34. Claire, don't touch me right now. I wasn't going to. I know. She turned the water off. I know. I just needed to say it out loud to somebody. At 1:36, she turned around and her face was completely dry and completely still. And Marcus had seen that face on exactly one person before, and it was Nikki in an office 11 minutes after the word ovarian. Marcus, Claire said, "Do you understand what she just gave us?" "Yes." "Do you actually, Claire? Because it's not a story anymore." Her voice was low, and it was fast, and it was the voice from the driveway, the conference room voice. And this time, Marcus did not stop her. For 11 months, every single thing that man did to me was a story. A woman says her ex has a key. A woman says her ring came back. A woman says, and a man in a uniform writes it down and closes the notebook and says civil matter. Because there's never a witness, Marcus. There's never a witness. That's the entire design. Claire. And your 8-year-old rode past him 4 times. Claire. He wasn't in my house. He was in my yard. In daylight. In July. On a ladder. In a neighborhood where a child was riding a bike and a child saw him and a child can describe his hat. Claire, stop. That's not civil, Claire said. That's not a story. That is criminal trespass with a witness and an approach to a minor. And Marcus, do you know what happens if she says 20 words of that in a room with a... Claire, stop. At 1:38, Marcus Williams put his hand flat on his own kitchen counter and said no. Claire went silent. No, he said again. Marcus, you're not putting my daughter in a room. I'm not putting her anywhere. You just did, Marcus said. You just walked her all the way into a deposition in your head in about 9 seconds, and I watched you do it. Because it's true. I know it's true. And there it was, the voice finally, and he caught it in his own throat like a man catching a plate and brought it back down to nothing. And the silence after was worse than the shout. I know it's true. You think I don't know what she's got? I've known for 20 minutes and I've already been all the way down that road and all the way back. Then Claire, do you know what happens to a black 8-year-old girl in a room with lawyers? Claire didn't answer. Do you know what they do to her? They don't call her a liar, Marcus said. That's the thing you're picturing. You're picturing somebody calling her a liar and me standing up and defending her. That's not what happens. What happens is a very kind man in a very nice suit asks her sweetheart, do you like Miss Claire? And she says, yes. And he says, and you want Miss Claire to be happy, don't you? And she says, yes. And he says, and your daddy likes Miss Claire too, doesn't he? And she says, yes, because she's 8 and she does and she's honest and her mom is dead. Claire. And then he asks her when she first told her daddy about the man in the yard. And she says, last night. And he says last night. Not Wednesday, not Thursday. Last night, after your daddy lost his job. The refrigerator hummed. And that's it, Marcus said. That's the whole thing. That's the whole case right there. And she'll never know she did it. She'll be 40 years old and she'll still think she helped. At 1:44, Clare Bennett sat down on Marcus Williams's kitchen floor. Not a chair. The floor with her back against the dishwasher, and she pulled her knees up. Okay, she said. You're right, and I hate it, and you're right. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes. That's 2, you're counting. I'm counting, she said. And neither of them laughed. And somehow, that was the closest they had been yet. At 1:51, Marcus said, there's a worse part. How? He waved at her. Claire lowered her hands. He waved at her, Marcus said. And he asked her 3 questions, and one of them was, does your aunt live close? Oh, God. That's not a man casing an air conditioner, Marcus said. That's a man learning a family. At 6:15 on Friday morning, Renee Williams's Camry pulled into her brother's driveway, and Renee Williams got out of it without shutting the door, and walked straight past her brother and into his house, and looked at Clare Bennett for 4 seconds. You're the neighbor. I'm Claire, Renee, Marcus said. I drove 35 minutes. Renee put her keys in her purse. You want to tell me why my brother called me at 9 o'clock at night, sounding like Daddy did in 2004? At 6:22 over coffee, nobody drank, they told her. Renee Williams listened to the whole thing without interrupting once, which anybody who knew her would tell you was the single most frightening thing she could have done. When they were finished, she sat back and folded her hands and said, Marcus, get Lily's bag. Renee, get her bag. It's 4 days. It's however long it is, Renee said. Go get her bag. He went. And Renee Williams turned to Clare Bennett and said in a voice so quiet it barely carried across the table, do you know what my brother's been through? Some of it. You don't know any of it. No, Claire said. I don't. Renee blinked just once. She had come loaded for a fight and the woman had simply set the gun down. He was 31 years old, Renee said. He held Nikki's hand, and he held Lily's hand at the same time in the same room, and he did not fall apart. And I have hated him for 3 years for not falling apart, because it means he's still holding it. You understand? He never put it down. He just found a way to carry it and go to work. I know. And now, there's a man asking his baby where her auntie lives. Renee, you brought that here. Yes, Claire said. Renee stopped. I did, Claire said. I brought it here. I knocked on his door at midnight and I brought it into his house. And there is not one word you can say to me that I have not already said to myself at 4 o'clock this morning on his kitchen floor. At 6:29, Renee Williams said, What? You didn't argue. There's nothing to argue. Everybody argues, Renee said. That's what people do. They come into my brother's house and they take and then they explain. You didn't explain. She picked up her coffee. Don't get comfortable, she said. I still don't like you. That's fair, but I don't dislike you as much as I planned to on the drive over, Renee said. And I planned very hard. At 6:41, Marcus carried his daughter out to the car with her bag over his shoulder and her arms around his neck, and Lily said into his ear, Daddy, is this because of the man? It's because Aunt Renee's got a pool. Aunt Renee does not have a pool. Aunt Renee's got a hose. Daddy, is it because of the man? At 6:42, Marcus Williams stood in his driveway holding his 8-year-old and said yes. Okay, Lily said. You're not scared. Number. Because you're mad. What? You get quiet when you're scared, Lily said. And you get slow when you're mad. And you've been slow since last night. And Marcus Williams held on to his daughter in a driveway at 6:42 in the morning and could not say one word. At 9:15, Marcus walked into a shop off Fulton Industrial with his uniform shirt on because Doug Petrella had said suspended pending review and had not said don't come in, and Marcus had decided at some point around 4 in the morning that he was going to make a man say it to his face. Doug Petrella was 58 years old, 190 pounds of X-Tech gone soft, and he did not look up when Marcus came in. Marcus. Doug, I said Monday. You said pending review. I'm here for the review. That's not how it, Doug, Marcus said. Look at me. Doug Petrella looked up, and Marcus saw something he had absolutely not driven over there expecting to see. The man was terrified. Doug. Marcus, sit down. Doug, what's? Sit down, Doug said, and Marcus sat down, because in 5 years he had never once heard Doug Petrella say anything in that voice. At 9:19, Doug Petrella turned his monitor around, read it. Marcus read it. It was an email. It was from an account at a domain Marcus had never seen before Wednesday. It was 4 lines long, and it was extremely polite, and it referenced 11 work orders by number over 4 years at an address on Delano Street. 11 by number, Doug, Marcus said. How would anybody? They wouldn't, Doug said. Doug. Nobody has those numbers. Those numbers are in this building. Those numbers are in this software. A customer doesn't have a work order number from 2022. A customer has a receipt, and half of those don't even have a receipt because I didn't charge her. The room got very small. Somebody in here sent that out, Marcus said. Somebody in here sent that out, Doug said. At 9:24, Marcus Williams said, Was it you? And Doug Petrella, who had routed Marcus away from Buckhead for 5 years and called it routing, said no. Doug, no. He rubbed his mouth. Marcus, I have done you dirty. I want to say that. I've done you dirty and we both know it, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've been a good man to you because I haven't. I've been a coward. And there's a difference, and I know the difference. Marcus did not move. But I didn't send that, Doug said. I got that email at 11:51 last night, and I called you at 1 o'clock in the morning, and Marcus, I want you to think about why a man calls his tech at 1 o'clock in the morning. Because you were scared. Because I was scared, Doug said. Because at 11:51 at night, somebody sent me 11 work order numbers out of my own system. And that means they've got somebody in my shop. And I have 22 employees and a daughter at Georgia State, and I don't know which one it is. At 9:31, Doug Petrella said, Who did you make mad? Doug. Who? You don't want it. Try me, Marcus said. Doug Petrella sat back in his chair very slowly and looked at the ceiling and said a word Marcus had never heard him say in 5 years. Doug. We do their buildings, Doug said. Marcus stopped breathing. What? Marsh Development. We've had the maintenance contract on the medical park since 2023. Doug laughed, and it was a horrible sound. That's 40% of my gross, Marcus. 40%. You want to know why you don't go to Buckhead, half of Buckhead's because of that contract. Somebody at that company said your name last night, and I got the email 11 minutes later. And Marcus, I'm not going to be able to protect you, and I want you to hear me say that out loud instead of finding it out on Monday. At 9:36, Marcus said, Then why'd you turn the monitor around? Doug Petrella didn't answer for a while. Because my daddy was a tech, he said, and in 1988 a man did this exact thing to him, and I watched him try to explain it at a kitchen table to my mother, and he could not because he didn't have the paper. He turned the monitor back around. You want a printout, he said. Doug, I'm asking if you want a printout, Marcus. It's a simple question. My hands are shaking. I might hit print by accident. I'm 58. At 9:39, Doug Petrella hit print by accident. At 11:20 that morning, Marcus Williams knocked on Ruthie Coleman's door with a folded piece of paper in his back pocket, and Ruthie Coleman opened it and looked at his face and said, "Come in this house." "Miss Ruthie, come in this house, Marcus." He sat at her table. She poured ice water. He didn't touch it. "Miss Ruthie, I need to ask you again. I know you do. Who owns this house?" And Ruthie Coleman, 81 years old, sat down across from a man she had been handing ice water to for 4 years and said, "I do." Till January. At 11:24, Marcus Williams said, "Say that again." "I signed something in June." "Miss Ruthie, don't you look at me like that. I'm not looking at you like anything. You are." She folded her hands. "Marcus Williams, you are looking at me exactly the way my son looked at me on the phone from Charlotte, and I will not have it in my own kitchen." "Yes, ma'am." "Do you know what my taxes were in 2019? "No, ma'am." $1,140, Ruthie said. "Do you know what they are now?" Marcus said nothing. $9,400, Ruthie said. "And I get $1,800 a month. And Marcus, you have been in this house 11 times, and you have never one time asked me what I get a month, because you're a gentleman, and gentlemen don't ask. And that is exactly how they get you." At 11:29, Marcus put his hands over his face. "So a young man came to my door in June," Ruthie said. "Very nice. Very sorry for me. And he said, 'Miss Coleman, we can't have you losing this house at auction. That's a tragedy, and there's a program.' And he said, 'You sign this option, and we pay your taxes, and you stay right here. You stay in this house. And in January, we sit down again.'" "An option, Ruthie. An option means—" "I know what it means," Ruthie Coleman said. "I know exactly what it means. I've got a nephew who's a paralegal. He told me in July, and I cried for 2 days, and then I got up. Because, Marcus, what was I supposed to do? Say no and lose it in September instead of January." Marcus lowered his hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you'd have paid it," Ruthie said. "You'd have gone and got a third job and paid a $9,000 tax bill for a woman who isn't your mother. And Marcus Williams, I have watched you kill yourself for this street for 3 years, and I was not going to be the one who finished you." At 11:34, Ruthie Coleman said the thing that broke him. "Baby, you think I don't know why you do it?" "Miss Ruthie, you think I don't know about Deacon Hollis and that compressor in his truck bed?" Marcus's head came up. "Marcus," she said, "who do you think called him?" The kitchen went absolutely still. July 3 years ago. Ruthie Coleman looked at him. "That man called me at 11 o'clock at night. Deacon Hollis called me and he said, 'Ruthie, Marcus is on the phone begging strangers, and his wife is dying in a hot room, and he will not ask us. And we cannot let him ask us because he won't. So we have to just do it.' So I called Pete," she said, "and Pete called Ortega, and Hollis found that unit at a teardown off Bankhead at 6 o'clock in the morning." Marcus Williams put his head down on Ruthie Coleman's kitchen table. "You've been paying us back for 3 years, Ruthie said, and put her hand on the back of his neck. "And baby, it was never a debt. It was never a debt. It was a gift. And you have been so scared of it for 3 whole years that you turned it into a bill so you'd know what it cost." At 11:41, Marcus Williams cried in an 81-year-old woman's kitchen for the first time since the funeral, and she did not say one word about it. She just kept her hand on his neck and let him. At 12:50, he got in his truck and called Claire. She didn't pick up. At 12:52, he called again. She didn't pick up. At 12:55, Marcus Williams sat in a hot truck outside a house that would not be Ruthie Coleman's in January, and looked at his phone and felt something crawl up the back of his neck, and he called a 4th time, and it went straight to voicemail, which meant the phone was off, which meant it had been turned off, which meant somebody had turned it off. At 1:04, he was doing 55 through a 35. At 1:11, he came through his own front door, and the house was 71 degrees and empty, and her bag was gone. There was a note on the counter under the percolator. 4 words. "I'm sorry. That's 3. At 1:12, Marcus Williams said out loud to an empty house, "Claire, don't." At 1:14, he called Renee. "Marcus, is Lily with you?" "She's in the yard with the hose." "What? Don't let her out of the yard." "Marcus." "Renee, I'm asking." "Marcus Anthony, what has happened?" At 1:15, Marcus said she went to him. At 3:40 that afternoon, Clare Bennett sat across a desk from Preston Marsh in an office on the 11th floor of a building his company owned with a folder in her lap and did not shake. At 3:41, Preston Marsh said, "You look tired, sweetheart. I'm going to talk. You're going to listen." "Of course. In March, your son unplugged my refrigerator. In April, he took my mother's ring. In May, he put it back. On Wednesday, he pulled the disconnect on my condenser at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and made a 104-degree apartment out of my home. And he stood in my backyard on a ladder for 20 minutes while a child rode a bicycle past him 4 times. Preston Marsh did not blink. And on Thursday at 11:47 at night, Clare said he stood on that child's porch. At 3:44, Preston Marsh said, "How much?" Clare's mouth actually opened. "I'm sorry. I'm asking how much." He said it the way a man reads a lunch menu. "Clare, I have done this 11 times. You are number 12. The number is usually somewhere between 200 and 400,000, and you're smarter than the last 4, so I'd start you at 5. $500,000? Yes." At 3:46, Clare Bennett said, "You knew." "Of course I knew. You've always known, Clare." Preston Marsh folded his hands. "I have known since he was 19 years old. Do you think I like it? I don't like it. I lie awake. My wife left over it, but he's my son, and I'm 67 years old, and there's not one thing on this earth I can do about what he is. So I do the only thing I can do, which is make sure that every single woman he ruins walks away with more than she came in with." "That's not—" "It is, though," he said. "It's exactly what it is. I'm not the villain in this, Clare. I'm the cleanup." At 3:49, Clare said, "I'm not taking your money." "You will. I have the plan set. I have the June call where a man said the assessments do the work." "Ben Harrow," Preston Marsh said. "He's an idiot. He's been an idiot for 9 years, and I keep him because he's good with the county." He smiled. "Clare, I'll say this once so you don't waste the weekend on it. Everything in that folder is legal, every piece. You could put it on the front page of the paper tomorrow morning, and by Monday afternoon, 300 people would call this office wanting to invest." Clare's hands went white on the folder. "Then what stops you?" she said. "Nothing stops me." "Then why are you offering me $500,000? At 3:52, Preston Marsh stopped smiling because of the little girl, he said. Clare went cold all the way down. "There it is," Preston said quietly. "You see, you're smart. Everything else is legal, Clare. Every last piece of it. But a grown man in a backyard on a ladder asking an 8-year-old child where her aunt lives. He let it sit. That's not legal," he said. "That's not a civil matter. That's not tax assessments and phasing plans. That's a photograph on a news broadcast and my son's face under it. And Clare, I can survive anything in that folder in your lap. I cannot survive that child." At 3:55, Clare Bennett understood 11 months late that she had never once in her life been the leverage. So Preston Marsh said and opened a drawer and set a checkbook on the desk. "Let's talk about what it costs to make sure that little girl never has to say a word." And at 3:56 in the afternoon, 45 miles of Atlanta traffic away, Marcus Williams's phone rang, and it was a number he didn't know, and he answered it, and a woman's voice he had never heard said, "Mr. Williams, this is Renee's neighbor. Honey, I don't want you to panic, but there's a man parked outside your sister's house." Marcus Williams did not panic. That was the strangest part, and he knew it even while it was happening. Something in him went quiet and level the way it had gone at 6:15 on a July morning 3 years ago when a hospice nurse said, "It's today." And he heard himself say in a voice that belonged to somebody calmer than he was, "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Deborah. I'm 2 doors up from Renee. Deborah is my daughter in the yard." "She's in the yard. Baby, she's fine. She's got the hose." "Is the man out of the car?" "He's not out of the car." "Deborah, listen to me." Marcus was already moving. "Go stand in Renee's yard." "Honey, I don't want to." "I know you don't. Go stand in the yard where he can see you and take your phone and hold it up like you're taking a picture of the sky and do not point it at him. Just hold it up," Marcus said. "That's all. He'll leave." At 3:59, Deborah Coates, 62 years old, walked out into her neighbor's yard in house shoes and held her phone up at the sky. At 4:01, the car pulled off the curb. At 4:02, Renee called him screaming. At 4:24, Marcus was there, and his daughter was on his hip, and he was standing in his sister's kitchen with his heart going like a hammer in a can, and Renee was saying the same 4 words over and over. "I didn't see him. Marcus, I didn't see him. I was inside, and I didn't see him. Renee, I was inside making a sandwich. Renee, look at me. She was 10 feet from the street. Renee." Marcus put his free hand on his sister's shoulder. "You didn't do anything wrong." And Renee Williams, who had never in 38 years let her little brother comfort her about anything, put her face in her hands and said, "That's what everybody said to you about Nikki, and you never believed it either." At 4:31, Lily said into her father's shoulder, "Daddy, you're squeezing." He put her down. "Baby, was it the man? I don't know. Was it a real don't know or a daddy don't know?" At 4:32, Marcus Williams crouched down and said, "It's a real don't know," and Lily nodded like a woman signing for a package. And something in Marcus's chest went through the floor because he understood that he had just gotten one back, one out of however many he was going to spend. At 4:40, he called Claire. Voicemail. At 4:41, he called again. Voicemail. At 4:44, he sat down on his sister's front steps and put his elbows on his knees and said out loud, to nobody, "Claire, what did you do?" At 4:47, Preston Marsh's pen was still uncapped. "You've been quiet 9 minutes," he said. "I'm thinking. That's a long time to think about $500,000. It's not a long time to think about a child," Claire said. Preston Marsh set the pen down. "Say the number," he said. "I'll write it." 67, Claire. "I've got a man in Buckhead whose daughter cost me 1.1 and she calls me at Christmas." At 4:49, Clare Bennett said, "She calls you at Christmas." "She does." "Do you hear that?" "I hear a woman who took a settlement and got on with her life," Preston said, "which is more than I can say for you at the moment." "Mr. Marsh," Claire leaned forward, "you said you're the cleanup." "I did. 11 times, 12 with you." 11 women, Claire said. 11 women got checks and every single one of them signed something, didn't they? And every single one of them can never say a word. And so the 12th one walks in 11 months later and finds out she's the 12th one on the day she gets here. Preston Marsh said nothing. "You didn't clean up anything," Claire said. "You built him. Every time you wrote a check, you bought him another one. He's 41 years old, and he has never once in his life met a consequence because his daddy gets there first with a checkbook. And you have the nerve to sit in this chair and tell me your wife left you over it, like you're the one who's been through something." At 4:52, Preston Marsh's face did something Claire had never seen it do. It went old. "Yes," he said. "What?" "Yes," he said again. "That's right. That's exactly right. And you're the first one who ever said it in this room, and I have been waiting 11 years for somebody to say it in this room." Claire's hands went still on the folder. "Then say no," she said. "What?" "Say no to him, one time. Say, Ethan, I'm not paying. Say, Ethan, you're on your own." "I can't." "You can, Claire." "I can't," Preston Marsh said. And for 1 second, the whole 11th floor of that building was just a 67-year-old man in a chair. Do you understand what that would be? Do you understand what it would be to be the man who did that to his own son? I'd have to live in it every day for however many years I've got left. At 4:55, Clare Bennett stood up. "You'd have to live in it," she said. "That's the sentence. That's the actual sentence right there. You won't do it because you'd have to live in it." "And 11 women live in it," she said. 12. An 81-year-old woman on Delano Street lives in it. A man who fixes air conditioners for free lives in it. There's a little girl in Decatur who is going to live in it for the rest of her life because a nice man waved at her over a fence. "Claire, sit down." "Number." "Claire, if you walk out that door, I cannot help you." At 4:57, Claire said, "I'm not asking you to help me." "Then what are you doing here?" And Clare Bennett said, "I came to find out if you knew." Preston Marsh stared at her. "That's it," she said. "That's the whole reason. Not the money, not the folder, not the project. I came here to find out whether the man who signs my checks knew what his son does. Because for 11 months, I've been lying awake asking myself if I'm crazy. And if you'd looked me in the face and said I had no idea, I'd have gone home and I'd have believed I was crazy for the rest of my life." She picked up her bag. "You said, of course I knew. You said it in 4 seconds. You didn't even have to think." "Claire." "Thank you," Claire said. "That's the first honest thing anybody's said to me since March." At 4:59, she was at the door. "Claire." She stopped. "Don't put the child in it," Preston Marsh said. At 5 o'clock, Clare Bennett turned around and said, "You don't get to say that." "I'm saying it anyway. You don't get to sit in that chair and be worried about her." "I'm not worried about her," Preston said. "I'm telling you what will happen. I know these people, Claire. They're my people. I hired most of them. If that child's name goes in a filing, there will be a very good firm on it inside of 90 minutes, and they will go at her father, not her, him. They will find 11 false warranty claims on company paperwork, and they will put it on a screen, and they will say, 'This is a man who lies on documents for sympathetic reasons.' And a jury will believe it because it's true." Claire's hand was on the door. "You want to protect that little girl. Preston Marsh said. Then, don't hand her to me. I will use her. Not because I want to, because I'll be in a room where it's the only thing left on the table, and I'll be 67 and I'll do it. At 5:03, Clare Bennett said, then I won't put her in a filing. Good. I'll do something worse. Do something worse then. At 6:20 that evening, Marcus's front door opened and Clare Bennett walked into his house. And Marcus Williams was standing in his own living room, and he did not say hello. Where were you? Marcus, where were you, Clare? You know where I was? Say it. I went to Preston Marsh's office. At 6:21, Marcus Williams said, there was a man outside my sister's house. Clare's bag hit the floor. What? 4 o'clock. Parked, watching my child in a yard. Marcus, while you were in his daddy's office. Marcus said there was a car outside my sister's house. Clare had gone white to the lips. Is she? She's fine. She's with Renee. Renee's got a friend sitting in the driveway with a folding chair and a Louisville Slugger, which I want you to picture because that's my life now. Marcus, I didn't know. I know you didn't know. And it came out of him at last. All of it. All 40 hours of it, and it took the whole room. That's the problem, Clare. You don't know. You have never once known. You didn't know what it looked like when you knocked on my door. You didn't know what it looked like when you talked to that cop in my driveway. You didn't know he had a father. You didn't know he had 11 women before you. And you turned your phone off. I turned it off so I wouldn't. You turned your phone off, Marcus said, and I called you 4 times and it went straight to voicemail, and I sat in a hot truck, and I thought that's how it happens. That's exactly how it happens. Somebody's fine, and then a phone's off. At 6:24, Clare Bennett said, I turned it off so I wouldn't call you and ask permission. Marcus stopped. Say that again. Say that. I turned it off so I wouldn't call you, Clare said, because I knew that if I heard your voice, I'd ask you if I should go, and you'd have said no, and I'd have said, okay. And Marcus, I've spent 4 years asking a man if I was sure, and I got in the elevator, and I thought, if I ask this one and he says no and I stop, then I never actually got out. I just changed who's holding it. The room went very quiet. That's not fair to you, she said. You'd have said no for good reasons. He said no for bad ones. It doesn't matter. It's still me standing in a hallway waiting to be told. At 6:27, Marcus Williams sat down. Clare, he said, that's the best reason anybody's ever given me for the worst thing anybody's ever done to me. I know. Don't ever do it again. I won't. That's 4, Marcus said. And Clare Bennett laughed, and then she was crying. And she sat down on the floor with her back against the door and said, he offered me $500,000. At 6:29, Marcus said, say that again. 11 women, Marcus. I'm the 12th. He's been paying them off since Ethan was 19. He said everything in my folder is legal, and he was right. And he said the only thing he can't survive is the little girl, and he was right about that too. And then he told me not to put her in it. And Marcus, that's the part. That's the part I drove 40 minutes with. He told me not to put her in it because he would use her. He said it out loud. He said, don't hand her to me. I'll use her. I'll be in a room, and it'll be the only thing left, and I'll do it. Marcus put his hands over his face. So we've got nothing, he said. No, Clare said. We've got everything. We've just been holding it upside down. At 6:33, Clare Bennett stood up off the floor. Marcus, what's the one thing that man cannot survive? Lily. No, she was already pulling the folder out of her bag. Lily is just the photograph. Think, why is a photograph the only thing he can't survive? Everything else is legal. The taxes are legal. The options are legal. Ben Harrow saying the assessments do the work is legal. He told me put it on the front page, and 300 people call wanting to invest. So why does a man in a backyard end him? Because it's ugly. Because it's specific, Clare said. Because it's a person, Marcus. Nobody in this city is going to riot about a tax assessment, but you put a face on it, and it's over. And he knows that. And that's why he spent 11 years making sure there's never a face, because he pays for the faces. 11 checks. 11 faces bought. Marcus lowered his hands. Clare. He can survive anything except a person nobody paid, Clare said. At 6:36, Marcus Williams stood up. Ruthie Coleman. Ruthie Coleman. Clare, she signed an option. An option is not a sale, Clare said. An option is a promise to sit down in January. Marcus, that's not a deed. That woman still owns her house. She owns it right now today. And she has until January. And there is not one lawyer in this state who can make her sign in January if she doesn't want to. She can't pay $9,400. No, Clare said. She can't. And she looked at him. At 6:38, Marcus Williams said no. Marcus. No, Clare. I know what your face is doing. No, it's $400,000 after taxes. No, Marcus. It's 9 houses. It's his money. Marcus shouted, and then he pulled it down hard because it was 6:38 and there was no child in the house, and he shouted anyway, and it scared him how good it felt. It's his money, Claire. You take his money, and you're number 12. You're a woman who calls it Christmas. I'm not signing anything. He'll make you sign. He can't, Claire said. That's the whole thing. That's what I figured out in the elevator. He can't make me sign because he doesn't have anything to make me sign with. He's already taken the project. He's already taken my career. It's gone, Marcus. It went Tuesday. I just hadn't finished understanding it. There is not one thing that man can threaten me with because he already spent it all before I ever walked in the door. At 6:41, Marcus said he'll come at me. He already did. He'll come at Lily. Marcus, Claire's voice dropped. He's coming at Lily right now. There was a car outside your sister's house at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I was sitting in a chair 45 miles away, and I want you to hear this that happened while I was doing nothing. That happened while we were being quiet. Quiet didn't buy you one single day. Marcus stood in the middle of his living room with both hands on the back of his own neck. Deacon Hollis, he said. What? Deacon Hollis put a compressor in my yard at 6 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't take $1, Marcus said, and I spent 3 years turning it into a bill. Ruthie told me this morning she's the one who called him. She's been watching me pay a debt that was never a debt for 3 years because I couldn't stand to just be given something. And now here you come, Marcus said, with $400,000. And I'm standing here doing it again. At 6:44, Clare Bennett said very quietly, "It's not for you." Marcus's head came up. "It's not for you," she said again. "That's what I keep trying to say. Marcus, I'm not paying your power bill. I'm paying an 81-year-old woman's taxes so she can say no in January, and you don't get a vote in that because it isn't your house and it isn't your debt and it is not your turn." The house hummed. "Now sit down," Claire said, "and help me figure out the other 8. At 8:15 that night, they were on the living room floor with a legal pad, and Claire was drawing a diagram, and Marcus Williams was on the phone with a 79-year-old man named Pete Alvarez, and it was the first phone call of 41. At 9:30, the 4th house on Delano said yes. At 10:10, the 6th house said no and hung up. And Marcus put his forehead on the carpet for a full minute before he dialed the 7th. At 11:02, the 8th house said, "Marcus Williams, baby, is this about the green signs?" At 11:47 that night, exactly 48 hours to the minute from the night a woman knocked on his door, Marcus Williams looked at the clock and laughed out loud. What Claire said. "Nothing," Marcus said. "Nothing. Keep dialing." At 2 in the morning and on Saturday, 9 houses on Delano Street knew each other's names for the first time in 11 years. At 8 in the morning on Saturday, Clare Bennett called a reporter. Not about tax assessments, not about marsh development, not about phasing plans or acquisitions or a conference call in June. She called a reporter and she said, "There's a man in Atlanta who's been fixing air conditioners for free for the 4 years for people who can't pay, and he's about to lose his job over it." The same week, the company that bought his neighbor's street sent his boss 11 work order numbers out of a private system at 11:51 at night. That's the story. His name's Marcus Williams, and he does not want to talk to you. At 8:04, the reporter said, "He doesn't want to talk to me." "No, ma'am." That's usually a bad sign. That's the story Claire said. At 11:20 on Saturday, Doug Petrella called Marcus. "Marcus, why is a reporter calling my office on a Saturday?" "I don't know, Doug." "Marcus, Doug, I've not spoken to one reporter, and you can put that in writing and I'll sign it." At 11:23, Doug Petrella said, 40% of my gross. "I know, you know what happens to me." "I know exactly what happens to you," Marcus said. "It's what's been happening to me for 5 years. It just never had a number on it before." The line was quiet a long time. "My daddy couldn't get the paper," Doug said. "Doug!" He tried to explain it at a kitchen table, and he didn't have the paper, and I was 9 years old, and I watched my mother decide he was lying. Doug Petrella breathed out. "Marcus, that email came out of my system. My system. If somebody in this shop pulled 11 work orders for a developer at midnight, then it isn't your job that's dirty. It's mine." At 11:26, Doug Petrella said, "I'm pulling the audit log." "Doug, I've got 22 employees and a daughter at Georgia State," Doug said. "And I'm 58 years old, and I've been a coward since 2021. And Marcus, you were right this morning. There's a difference, and I know the difference." At 11:28, he said, "Come in Monday, in uniform. You're on the schedule." At 1:50 on Sunday afternoon, Preston Marsh called Clare Bennett's cell phone. She let it ring 4 times. "Mr. Marsh, you called a reporter?" "I did. About an air conditioner repairman. About a man losing his job." At 1:52, Preston Marsh said, "That's very good. Thank you. That's genuinely very good. There's nothing in it. There's no allegation in it. It's just a nice man and a bad week and a coincidence. And I can't sue a coincidence, and every single person who reads it will do the arithmetic themselves, and I will never be able to point at one sentence and call it a lie." He laughed, and it sounded like his son. "You built me a photograph with no child in it." "Yes. Claire, how much?" "Number." "Claire, name it." At 1:55, Clare Bennett said $9,400. Silence. "What?" "That's the number," Claire said. "That's the whole number. $9,400 times 9 houses is $84,600. That's what it costs to buy Delano Street back from you, Mr. Marsh. $84,600. You offered me $600,000 to keep me quiet about your son, and the whole street costs $84,000. That's what I want you to sit with," she said. "You've been telling yourself for 11 years that this is the price of things. That's the price. It's $84,600, and you've got it in a drawer." At 1:58, Preston Marsh said, "You're going to pay it." "Yes, with money you don't have." "With money I'm about to not have," Claire said. "I've got $211,000 in retirement and a condo in Inman Park and a car I don't need and an accent chair I don't sit in. You'll never work in this city again." "Mr. Marsh," Claire said, "I've been sleeping on a couch for 4 days, and it's the first 4 nights I've slept." At 2:11, Preston Marsh said the last thing he ever said to her. "He was a sweet boy," he said. "Ethan, when he was 9, he was a sweet boy, and I don't know what happened." And Clare Bennett said, "Nothing happened. That's the point. Nothing ever happened to him, not one time." She hung up. At 7:40 Monday morning, Marcus Williams walked into a shop off Fulton Industrial in uniform, and 22 people did not look at him, and 1 man did. Doug Petrella was standing by the printer with a folder. "Marcus." "Doug." "Kyle Reiner." Marcus stopped. "Kyle." 11:51 Thursday night, Doug said. "Logged in from home. Pulled 11 work orders on an address he's never set foot on in his life. He's been getting a consulting fee from a Marsh subsidiary since 2024, and I have it because he used the shop email to invoice them because he's 26 and he's an idiot." At 7:43, Marcus Williams said, "Doug, that's 40% of your gross." "Yeah," Doug said. "Doug." "Marcus, I've been doing your math for you for 5 years, Doug Petrella said. "Let me do mine." At 9:15 Monday morning, Preston Marsh's office was called for comment. At 4 o'clock Monday afternoon, Marsh Development terminated its relationship with a consultant. At 6 o'clock Monday evening, the story ran, and it was 2,000 words about an air conditioner repairman who wouldn't take money, and it mentioned a work order number, and it did not mention a child, and it did not need to. At 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, there were 41 voicemails. At 11 o'clock Tuesday morning, there were 300. At 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, a woman in Marietta who had never met Marcus Williams sent $9,400 to a fund with an 81-year-old woman's name on it. And by Friday, there was $240,000 in it, and Clare Bennett sat on the floor of Marcus's living room and cried so hard she couldn't breathe, and Lily Williams patted her back and said, "It's okay, Miss Clare. Daddy cries in the shower." At 4 o'clock that Friday, Marcus Williams got a phone call from a woman he had never spoken to. "Mr. Williams." "Yes, ma'am. You don't know me. My name's Andrea. I lived with Ethan Marsh in 2019. Marcus sat down. "I signed something," she said, "in 2020. I've had it in a drawer for 6 years, and I've never said one word to one person, and I read about you on Tuesday. And Mr. Williams, I want you to know something." "Yes, ma'am." "There's 11 of us," Andrea said, "and we found each other on Wednesday." At 4:04, Marcus Williams said, "Ma'am, I don't want to." "You don't have to want to," Andrea said. "You didn't do it. We did. We did it on Wednesday, all 11 of us in a group chat." "And Mr. Williams, do you know what we found out?" "No, ma'am." "Every single one of those agreements is signed by him," she said. "By Preston. Personally. 11 times over 11 years. The same signature, the same law firm, the same paragraph. And a lawyer in Savannah told us Wednesday night that 11 of the same thing isn't 11 settlements." "What is it?" "It's a pattern," Andrea said. Ethan Marsh was arrested on a Thursday in September on a charge that had nothing to do with an air conditioner and nothing to do with a little girl and everything to do with a house in Buckhead in 2019. Preston Marsh was not arrested. Preston Marsh was ruined, which Marcus came to understand was different and slower, and in some ways he could not explain to his pastor worse. Ruthie Coleman did not sit down with anybody in January. She paid $9,400 in November with a cashier's check in person at the counter and made them give her a receipt, and she kept it in her Bible. Marcus Williams worked for Doug Petrella for 11 more months. And in the 11th month, Doug called him into the office and turned the monitor around one last time. And it was a business license application with Marcus's name on it, half filled out. "Doug, what is this?" "It's a resignation," Doug said. "I'm just doing the typing." "Doug, you'll be down to 9 trucks." "Marcus, I'm 59 years old, and I've got the Delano contract," Doug Petrella said, "because 9 houses on that street would not let anybody else touch their units, and they told me so on the phone one at a time. And Miss Coleman told me I could keep the work if I made you a partner, and I told her I'd do better." At 9 o'clock on a morning in April, Williams Air opened with 2 trucks, and one of them was 16 years old, and the sign on the side was designed for free by an interior designer with no clients. Clare Bennett never worked in Atlanta again. She worked in Decatur and in Marietta and in 100 small rooms, nobody photographed. And by the second year, she was making 40% of what she used to make and turning down work. And on a night the following July, when it was 101 degrees at 9 o'clock, and the grid was groaning, and Marcus Williams had been in an attic for 11 hours, there was a knock on his door at 11:47. He looked at the clock first. He did not look for the bat. He opened the door, and Clare Bennett was standing there with her hands behind her back and a face he had learned every single inch of, and she said, "My air conditioner is working." "I know it's working," Marcus said. "I fixed it. That's not why I'm here." "I know that too, Claire." Her voice shook. "I've knocked on this door for a year and a half, and every single time I've had a reason. Homework, dinner, groceries, apart. I've had a reason every single time because I'm a woman who does not know how to knock on a door without one. And I don't have one tonight," she said. At 11:48, Marcus Williams said, "Then come in." That's it, Claire. That's all it ever was. And from down the hall in a nightgown with a cartoon otter on it, 11 years old now, and holding the door frame with both hands because some things do not change, Lily Williams said, "Are you two going to do this out there all night? Because I have school." And Claire laughed, and she went in.